work with your sales team, with all of your callers to kind of help them to use this insight data that we provide our clients with in the most successful way, so that you can really turn these these things on spreadsheets and in the Priority Engine dashboard into genuine useful conversations, and get them into your pipeline. What is the kind of present reality? Well, as Greg mentioned before, the reality is IT and tech buyers, they do their research a long time before they engage with you. So what's the impact of that for your sales team? Well, the impact is that they really need to be giving value when they're making these engagements and on these cold calls. And what does that look like? Well, if you look here, you can see some of the things that are really important to the IT and tech buyers. And the first one there, the offer is related to a product service I've recently been researching. Well, up until recently, you'd need to be telepathic in order to do that. But in recent terms, and obviously TechTarget are at the forefront of this now in the industry, we can give you that insight. The salesperson explains how the solution would fit into my current infrastructure. I mean, ditto that one as well. But again, there are data sources where you can find that information now. And giving the Priority Engine a plug, because we haven't done it enough today, you can get that from there too. I'm familiar with the vendor's brand. I mean, obviously that's something that we can help you with there too. So, really, looking at all of these points here, how do you then go to arm your salespeople if you're a marketer? And those are the kind of things down there that we see. So, arm them with that information on that, on that account, on that individual, on their infrastructure. And then, like Greg mentioned before, you can't call these people up and say, "Oh, hi, I can see that you've downloaded this white paper." The people don't like that. There's a paradox here, because they want you to be telepathic, but they don't want you to know that you know what they've been looking at. So, and I've got some tactics to kind of help you with that later. Okay, so really, this is the kind of best practices that bring about success. And obviously ANZ, I've been here for a year. I was in our EMEA office, based in London for 4 years. And people over here, teams over here are much smaller. You are time poor, and so prioritization is really important when it comes to identifying which accounts are the ones that you want to put all of that effort behind. And Priority Engine, we can help you with that. There are obviously other ways of doing that the SaaS team were alluding to as well. Personalize the outreach. That's kind of going back to the previous slide. I'll show you how to do that in simple terms using some of our data in the next slide. Be persistent as well. I mean, that's really important. So mix and match phone calls with emails, with social media interactions, and then sell consultatively. So you can give value to these IT and tech buyers way before they become a client. And the way that you give them value is by giving them information that they're hungry for, that's going to help them on their IT purchase journey and on their project research journey. And so it's really about setting yourself up as an educator, particularly for salespeople. And this is some of the data points that we've got within Priority Engine specifically. So you've got some topical interest there, and this is based on the idea of a finance organization that's researching under one of the many different segments that we offer. In this case, it's two. It's big data plus BI and analytics, and so you get an idea of who's at the account, the TechTarget members there, and other people from Discover.org, and then specifically the topics that they care about, and also in that mind reading piece. You can see whose sponsored content they've been looking at, as well as their install base as well. And then, using this idea of being an educator, rolling up all of that into an offering. In this case, it's a presentation that's going to genuinely help them on their research journey. So I think I've spoken enough, and you've heard me speak about Priority Engine far too much. So let's now hear from our panelists. We've got Leanna Lewis from Rackspace. We've got James Enoch from SAS and Tobias Murden from Informatica. If you could join us up here, please, that'd be great. Thank you. So everybody, talks about this, the marketing sales dynamic as a fractious relationship, okay? And I just wondered if you've seen it progress at all in recent times, and if so, how? And if not, what things can be done to improve it from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been previously quite a fractious relationship. I think it's always been quite siloed. There's been a lack of communication between sales and marketing, and ultimately, as a sales professional, we want to be very communicative in sort of acting on what the market has to say and what they're responding to, and we like to know that marketing is listening to us. And over time, I think through a lot of data creation and tools and whatnot, it's really helped us communicate a lot better and collaborate a lot better. And even just in the time that I've been with Rackspace, we've changed as an organisation, and our marketing efforts has changed and aligned with how we've changed as an organisation. And so much of that has been driven by kind of our feedback on the market and how we've spoken with them, and ultimately they're really focused on us getting the best results. And we, even just the simple fact of marketing sort of moving closer to the sales team on the floor to listen to the conversations that we have, and we just communicate a lot more. And I think the relationship is much better than it used to be.
The interest for me is that I've come into a sales management role. I lead a commercial sales team, but I've come into it from a marketing background. I've run my own marketing business. I've worked in marketing roles. Then I worked in sales roles. And I've never really seen a fractious relationship, because in the marketing business that I ran, I was actually trying to establish sales and marketing strategies for organisations. So the key thing for me was always trying to make sure the KPIs aligned across the organisation. If the KPIs align, if everyone's, singing off the same sheet at the end of the day, hopefully they'll work really closely. I'd echo one point though, and I've noticed it recently, it's not just because the marketing team's here in the room. We've just done an office refurb, and one piece of that was actually turning into more of an open plan office, living in environments. But we've actually taken time where I've seen the marketing team sit in the sales team and myself sit closer to the marketing team. You start to have a different conversation as well, and start to really support each other to where you're striving to go with what you want to achieve.
I have seen the change in the relatively short career that I've had. The main change that I've seen is marketing has come so far. There's so many more insights. There's nurture programs that you can offer. It's not just giving a lead to a salesperson anymore. You're coming with all that insight, and of course they're going to see the worth of marketing. One thing I would say is that really the way that sales are looking at it, and I've worked in sales and marketing, is that if we don't know what you're doing in marketing, we don't think you're doing much, to be quite honest. And I think that vice versa. If you're sat in marketing and you don't know what salespeople are doing, you just don't think they're doing too much. So you need to be really transparent and just share what you're doing. And I've worked in previous companies where I met my marketing manager once over 2.5 years. So just don't do that. And yeah, I think the relationship would be fine.
What are the sort of top 3 most valuable resources that you get from your marketers?
Okay, so we're a little bit different with the BDMs in Informatica, because we actually sit in the marketing department. So I'm kind of more based towards marketing, I'd say. But the quality things, the resources that we need, one thing I would say is third-party verification. So case studies is a huge thing, a great resource to share with our clients. Another thing is just general insights. So actually knowing what a client wants. And kind of a general support and enablement as well. And as I said, as long as we know what the marketing department are doing, then it works really well.
Someone has to say it's a qualified leads at the end of the day. But there's the benefit for that, and Susie and Greg spoke about it this morning. But lead scoring model as well. So the logic and the business rules that go behind that no sales professional is going to run and go, okay, this actually is a qualified lead. They're just using their gut. Event expertise and collateral for me are absolutely key because I've got a lot of white space. So events are really key.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that, James. It's you, like as we always say in the sales department, our only currency is time and lack of it, and we really have to prioritise a lot with what we can do. And you can't just sort of splash out as many leads as possible, as many cold calls as you can anymore. It's much more effective if you can be very targeted and very really speak to your audience and get them in the right stage of that journey. So getting quality high leads and access to tools like Priority Engine and others that I use to really give that profile of the customer and who I'm talking to at the right time. I'd much rather reach out to much fewer organisations and have more quality conversations than just try and throw something at the wall and see what sticks. So that's really kind of a huge benefit that I get from my the marketing team and the access to those tools. And the work that they're doing, it's not just us using the tools, like the work that they do to really sort of drive our marketing campaigns accordingly, sort of on a wider space. So in the way of, rather than us focusing, they allow that wider breach and putting all the gaps, and they really pull all that data together. One thing that they're really doing at the moment is we're really trying to segment our customers and our customer journeys and really what their priorities are, and they really use all of the different data sources that we have to pull those together. And I think it's just a really valuable way that we can really help each other in sort of ultimately driving more business.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you're talking about the different data points and the different ways that they're helping you there. I mean, how do you go about getting as holistic a view as an account as possible, which obviously for an account manager like yourself is going to be an important thing to do?
It's basically using a broad range of data sources. There's not just kind of one tool that gives you everything, believe it or not. But it's really having that. So I use sort of a mixture of Priority Engine. That's really me understanding kind of who the best people to approach and really what their priorities are and what the conversation should be around. But ultimately, I also want to have an idea of the actual organisation as well. Like, we're territorially and sort of ROE aligned, so I need to know that I can approach an organisation that is in my patch, and I don't want to waste any time that someone isn't in my patch. So we use other kind of real database-like tools that really gives a huge profile of the actual business itself and their propensity to spend, their IT budgets, the size of their IT team. It's all really key information that I need to know when I approach that customer. It's all very well me knowing, yep, they're interested in cloud migrations, great. But if I need to know sort of what the nature of the organisation they are, and if really they're already sort of don't have that propensity to spend, then is it worth my time in investing in that organisation? So yeah, there's always a whole heap of different sources that I pull. Sort of as LinkedIn Sales Navigator is another one that I really use a lot to really understand them as an individual as well. So you've got what their priorities are, what they are, their background as an individual. Is it going to be a more technical conversation? Is it going to be a more sort of an operational business-like conversation, or and then just more information about the actual business itself? So all of those things come together in my sort of research process before I reach out to an organisation.
For me, look, I think it's about finding what works for you as an individual as well. Everyone's going to be different, and every piece that people use, they use differently. LinkedIn Sales Navigator is obviously a great tool. It's sort of essential to the work we do. I have to say Priority Engine because I have to get my plug-in. No, there's a reason we're here at the end of the day. It's because we use it, and there's valuable info that comes into it, not just from looking at accounts, but potentially looking at opportunities as well. And that's one area that I think people forget about, and I've sort of cottoned on and talking to the team. I'm like, but if we're working on an opportunity, I want to know who else is in that opportunity. So I want to just look up that account to see if they're looking number one at us, or are there other people they're engaging with. Newspapers are absolutely key for me. I manage a commercial sector, and it would be embarrassing if I went into a customer meeting and they were in the, say, AFR the day before and I hadn't seen an article, because you want your conversations to be relevant. And then it's just finding times that work for you around that. The other thing is your internal systems. So our digital footprint at SaaS, there's so much info in there, and a lot of people in sales roles forget to use it. I see Danny smiling and rolling her eyes all at the same time. So there's a lot there. And again, what works for one person may not work for others. So I don't think, as a sales leader, I can go to my team and say, hey, you should do this way, because I don't have a chance in the morning to read a newspaper. I've got 2 young kids. I just need to get them out the door. But at lunchtime I can. So if I can read the newspaper at lunch, that's what works for me. Other people I know start their day consuming every newspaper they can. So different rules for different people.
So yeah, you guys have covered quite a lot, but I wouldn't devalue the fact of just getting up from your seat and going to speak to salespeople. I think we look at all these different kind of tools that can give us insights, and yeah, we use Bombora, we use TechTarget, and they really are fantastic insights. But there's no one that knows their accounts better, than the actual salesperson that possibly has been working with that account for 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So yeah, just get up from your seat and go and have a chat, really. But yeah, as I said, we don't really have a problem, I'd say, with getting enough leads, as in the world and his wife is going to download as many white papers as they want. But it's really seeing which ones are actually valuable. So we use TechTarget to kind of see which companies are surging, and then I'll cross-reference it with the leads in my pot, basically.
So yeah, Tobias, I mean, you're kind of talking about prioritizing there in a way. So can you kind of talk a little bit more about that and why specifically prioritization is so important for you?
Yeah. So as I said. We definitely get enough people downloading white papers, and it's really a case of there's a lot of people trying to enable themselves, a lot of people trying to research for their future projects, not necessarily in the company that they're even with. So prioritizing the leads that are actually going to matter, we need the different insights, Bombora, Sales Navigator. The only thing that I think that we can kind of improve on is identifying buying centers. I think there's a lot of tools out there that kind of give us a great indication of who wants what, but I don't think, and you might tell me something different, Tom, but there's not too much out there that's really giving us kind of the actual buying centers and who's working with who. So yeah, there's still a little bit of work to do there, I think.
Prioritisation?
Yeah.
It's important. Lack of time, just at the end of the day. And there's a reason why people don't use the systems in front of them. Tom and I were having a discussion as well the other day. A lot of the stuff we make available to account executives through the tools that are available. I mean, what was it, 7,000 MarTech players up there as well? How many different sales enablement tools that are up there? And there's only so many hours in a day. So finding which tools give you effective insight and prioritising your leads through a scoring model or through where you've seen success, or making sure your territory sort of aligned in the right way for your teams to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I touched on this a little bit before. It is a distinct kind of lack of time, and ultimately you want to make sure that you're really giving that right amount of time to the right amount of effort. I always feel like I don't have enough hours in the day, and it's probably one of my weak points, is that I really struggle to truly work smart. I work really hard, and I really struggle to truly work smart, and I often have to kind of pull myself back and go, actually, I just wasted time on something that just wasn't valuable. And I think using all of that information, sometimes you can there's too many tools, and then you don't have enough time to use all the tools, and it's really finding that balance about what really works for you. And but quite often, like, the tools are great, but it also gives you a more well-rounded view of the actual organisation itself. And I've quite often, like it was mentioned earlier about the kind of the false positives and false negatives, what Colin was saying earlier. I've actually approached an organisation based on their research and what they've been doing, and really it's because they're so early in their journey, they're not actually ready yet. But because I had that really early conversation, when I've sort of slowly sort of touched them over time, little bits of content here and there, when I've sort of had people call me back sort of a year or so later, so I'm like, oh wow, yeah, I'm ready, but I thought of you first because you were first in my mind when I was first talking about this. But it's keeping that sort of cadence, as Tom said, Quite often it's not always they're ready to buy right away, but it's actually being front of mind first of all. That's all part of the prioritization process.
Okay, that's great. So, once you've prioritised, you've got through to the people, how do you then inject these insights into that initial conversation? And can you kind of give some examples of what works best?
It really does depend. I really wish I had kind of like a secret sauce that worked every time, and I'd make my life a lot easier. But some things I'm like, I just have like the best conversation, and I know I've sort of put in the right elements, but it's not reading it sort of word for word. You might have a top three, right? Okay, I know this company sort of has quite a propensity to outsource. They have a small IT team. They really seek support. They're a good fit customer for us. They really are looking at sort of key things that we can help them with. It's really obviously turning that conversation where it's not kind of robotic and reading off, yes, this is exactly, I know what I know what you're looking at, but sort of gently hinting that conversation. But the more I find, the less I give away actually in the actual initial call or engagement, the better, because I'm always much better off when I'm actually in front of someone. We've moved as an organisation, we're sort of targeting more kind of mid-market enterprise type companies, and ultimately it's become a lot more of a consultative based sell. It's not a simple formula approach at all anymore. It's not just one end product. I often feel when I'm sitting in with a customer that I feel a bit like a counsellor, like what are you feeling today, what's good for you, but ultimately you can't undermine the value of being in front of a customer. And quite often you can actually see from the data that it tells you they're interested in X, Y, Z, but when you actually see them, they've already done that. But because you use that as a way in, you've uncovered other opportunities that weren't presented to you in the data.
Hey Tom, I saw you downloaded that white paper, which has been done. We've all seen it done, unfortunately. No, for me, the way I can be most relevant is trying to put myself in a customer shoes, customer lens, and going, understand where I'm at in the sales process or in the marketing and sales process, and go, hey, okay, so I have this lead. My aim is to get a meeting. If I was a customer, what do I want to hear that's relevant to me that would actually make me interested in meeting this person? Because I don't know them from a bar of soap. And if I think about that before I actually put together what I'm going to say to them on the phone or what the email content's going to be, it's going to be more relevant and increase the likelihood. It's not going to guarantee it. There's no secret sauce that I've come across, but there are ways we can make that likelihood higher, and that's normally by thinking about what the customer pain point is and what value prop there is relevant to them.
Yeah, just something that I would say is exactly the same. Not calling them up and just sending you down a white paper, but you can have that conversation. If, for example, with Informatica, one of our products is data governance. So if I see that they've downloaded a data governance white paper, I can really manipulate that kind of first initial conversation towards what I know that they're interested in. So really simple stuff. So something to do with data governance would be a specialist would be worried about who's accessing their data. So I would say I speak to many data leaders like yourself, and the main problem that we find is people just don't know who's accessing their data. Is that the problem for you? Is that what you're having an issue with? It might not be, but it at least starts that conversation, and you haven't straight away said, hey, governance, you're pushing them towards that kind of topic. Great.
Okay. Now, obviously, Tobias, you're all slightly different from these two, account managers, reps here.
Yeah.
So, how much time do you spend on research before any particular call? And how do you kind of balance that with the kind of number of calls that you have to make? Or?
Yeah, so we're not kind of too strict on loads and hundreds of calls a day. I've been previous companies where kind of a minimum of 100 is required every day, which is just a little bit crazy. It doesn't give you that time to research. Now, me and my manager just this morning were looking through 40 new leads that have come in from a recent event that we've been part of. And I could straight away identify 5 that I've seen do additional research other than come to that event. So I already knew that they're the people I need to focus my efforts on. So that research stage for me is just massively important. Keeping your eye on all those insights will really just give you the best idea to kind of how to prioritize, well, going back to prioritization and how best to plan your day. That's kind of the way I look at things.
Past roles, I mean, I've seen it before as well. Targets. My first job was cold calling, and it was like the first job in corporate world was like get through 70 calls a day. I could get through 70 calls a day and meet what I wanted to meet, and I wouldn't achieve anything for the organisation at all. So prep can go from a minute to an hour, really. Can go for longer as well if it's a really strategic meeting that you're getting in front of someone for. So this, again, I don't think there's a perfect answer. What I'd say is, again, focus on and think about, if you're setting these targets, what is going to get you the outcome you need as an organisation. So if you want 5 meetings, or if you know you need 5 meetings to meet this dollar outcome for the organisation, is it going to be better through 10 highly qualified sort of calls and leads that you're following up, or is it better that we have a wide and go for 50 calls? And living thing, change it over time as well. Look at what works, see what works, change it.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely varies with how much research you do. It probably, I've been, I sort of get really ingrained in research sometimes, and then that's sort of where I've had to pull myself back and go, no, I've just spent too much time down a rabbit hole. So I almost have to kind of, right, okay, I'll give myself 15 minutes to research what I need to do. So I basically have my 3 or 4 key platforms that I call my key information. I make sure I put all that in my CRM so I don't have to do that again next time. I've got all that. That was something that was really useful with that the upgrade, where there's the consistent URL. So I can just get that information right away. And it just really depends, because ultimately you can do all the research in the world, and once you talk to them you realise they're not necessarily a prospect. So it's having that balance. But really I find kind of the more you can get in the shortest period of time, the better. I'd probably say 15 minutes to half an hour is kind of the real amount you really need, unless it is something that is particularly strategic, a larger organisation, a potentially larger opportunity. You might sort of broaden that to a longer period of time, but ultimately it's getting that balance, because you can really spend too much time in research and then you realise you're not spending enough time actually speaking to customers and getting through to them. So it's always a constant balance, battle and time for me.
Great.
Can I add one more thing? Just go into a call or a meeting and understand what you want to get out of it. What's the next step? So if we're having this call, am I trying to get a meeting? Am I trying to sell something? And just actually thinking about that is probably the most important step for me before I hop on the phone.
So we've probably got time for one last question. A short one. Very short one, John says. Is anyone? Yeah.
I got one here. Could be anyone from animals if said this. So we got to event, we got, let's say, 300 business cards and all these contacts, and basically we got the Indian platform, so we can see how these accounts actually engage with our side. We can actually see that, okay, based on that period from event to today, we have an increasing account engagement on site. We've seen some people doing some stuff. But the real question is, the salespeople will be like, how do I know that people who are like to the event actually, how do I prioritize the list of the leads that came in, including activities on the website? This is the person I should be talking to, or should I go above him, below him, or should I, or basically how to prioritize the conversation and get practices?
Yeah, with an event, it's a bit of a funny one, because especially if it's an event where there's a lot of organisations sort of targeting those people, so you have to be quite aware. Like if we do kind of like an AWS or Google Summit, for example, there's going to be hundreds of leads that have literally sort of 10s, 20s, 30 people going to be outreaching to them straight away. So it's that real balance, because you want it to be you want to get in touch with them quickly after the event so it's fresh in their mind, but you've also got to have that awareness that they're just literally going to be bombarded. And especially if it's a 2, 3, 4 day event, they're just like, I've been out of the office for 3 days, I'm this behind on work, please sort of work with me here. And it's basically, it's doing that good balance of reaching out to them quickly but cross-referencing them to your sort of data points to see what is the highest sort of priority that you should go out for. And quite often I end up using leads from events. You know that they're not necessarily the right person, but you've had a good conversation, and we really try and focus on getting, you know, as much information as we can from that, rather than just getting a business card. We basically we have like an iPad that we put a few notes in just so the salesperson has a bit of context. And I know if I've had that conversation, I know that they're not the right person I need to speak to, but I know that they'll remember the conversation with me, and it will basically say, look, we had this conversation, we mentioned about this, this and this, who would be the best person to speak to? And it's sort of instantly accelerating that a little bit more. But it is a really big balance, because sometimes it depends how many you get from an event. If it's a small, you know, round table like event, it's quite easy to get through everyone quite quickly. When it is hundreds of people, you've really got to prioritize. Like Tobias was saying, like you can instantly see from a list, just from the organizations they're from, the caliber of the people, you know that their propensity to spend. It's basically just pulling out those key, you know, 10-20% that you want to prioritize first of all, and then the rest quite often go into some form of nurture track to go into that natural kind of lead scoring, to naturally warm them up.
That's great, thank you very much. James and Tobias, I sort of felt that you were channeling some of your responses through Liana there.
It's fine.
And as lunch is rapidly approaching and I can feel my stomach rumbling, I think we'll leave it there. But thank you very much for the panel.